When I first heard about Robert Christopher Coppes, Bob,
Yes.
I was like, what does he do? Well, he's an expert on near-death experiences. Would you like to talk about near-death experiences? And my response is, who wouldn't want to talk about near-death experiences? Bob, how are you? Is it okay if I call you Bob?
Of course. Yeah. Go ahead.
And we're working on two different time zones. This is one of our international. This may be our first international. I'm not sure. Podcast that we're doing, which is kind of fun.
So I'm in the Netherlands. So that's far away from where you are. And there's a big pond in between us. But the techniques do their magic, and we can see each other and we can talk to each other, and everyone can listen to us. That's wonderful.
I think it's fascinating, and so I told you I'm fascinated by near death experiences, but you've got me beat because you had such an interesting journey to where you are. Right? I mean, just looking at your bio, you live in the Netherlands now, but that's not where you were born.
No, I was born in Venezuela, but my parents traveled all along the world, and I was born there with them. And then we went to Iran, and then after that we came back to the Netherlands, and that's where I was brought up most part of my youth.
But
But that's
you don't have a medical background. This is what I'm saying. You're even more fascinated. Where did you spend your career doing?
I was I was in finance. I was studying economics, and I was working in a bank, and I was teaching at the university in Groningen, and then I went to the Central Bank of the Netherlands, which is equivalent to the Federal Reserve in your country. So that's is you wouldn't think that someone is in banking is interested in spirituality, but hey, I'm there and it can work. There
The,
are more people that do two kinds of stuff. So
the reason I bring it up, I interviewed Dan Levin with his book about science, and we talked about some of the biggest scientific discoveries in our world was made by people who were not scientists.
that's
Right?
true.
That they were miners, that they were owners of stores, that they were, so the biggest archaeological discoveries were made by people who were not trained archaeologists. But it was a passion. And that's why I brought up your background, because as I said, I'm interested, but I haven't said, no, 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 I'm going to make this a whole second career. And so that's why I say you've beaten my interest, because you literally had a full life of, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get a doctorate in economics. I'm going to work for the finance department. I'm going to do all these different wonderful things I'm going to teach, but I'm going to make the time that I'm going to study this because I find it so compelling.
It was fascinating. The fact that near death experiences exist, it fascinated me. I got across to know about these things when I read the book of Raymond Moody. That was back in the 70s somewhere. And you must know that I was brought up Catholic with purgatory and hell, and I always thought, I don't understand that. That's funny. I don't think that's the right thing. And then in this book of Raymond Moody, there was a woman talking about her life review in her near-death experience. And the life review is something that it's a review of your life. You can see every little detail. You can see the whole thing. You understand what your purpose is on earth. You cannot always bring all the information back to your body after you're done. And then in this book, Raymond Moody's book, this woman has said something about her near-death experience, that she saw her life and that she was not really happy with some parts of it, but no one judged her. And that is not what I was taught in the Catholic Church. There will be someone judging you, and he will point you to the left side if you're good, and to the right side if you're bad, and purgatory if you're somewhere in between. And there was really in this text that I thought, that's how it is. This is how it is. There is no judgment, and I thought that was wonderful.
The book is called, your latest book is Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, where
Correct.
you literally have hundreds. I have found them. I will share with you where my came from. I've not had a near-death experience, but when I was being raised, my mother was on the telephone, right? This is back in the 60s. My mother was on the telephone, had a handheld line during a lightning storm in South Alabama, where I grew up, where they can be very intense lightning storms. Well, lightning hit the house, and literally she was on the phone, and it knocked her about 6 to 10 feet, threw her under the table. And she always told this story all the way to the end of her life, that she remembers being on the ceiling and looking down at her body.
Yeah.
And knowing that this is it, and I'm out of my body. And she goes, I was confused. I did not know
Yes.
what to do.
Yes.
But I also knew that, she said, the question was given, are you done? If you're done, then come home. If you're
Home.
not
The
done,
word is home.
yeah. If
Yeah,
you're not
right.
done, then go back. And my mother looked and said, I got all these kids. I'm
Well, she thought of
done.
you. She thought of you. That's
Yeah,
nice.
I'm
Good
not
mom.
done. Because, well, there's me and my brother and my sisters. There were 5 of us, right?
Yes.
And so my mother said, I've got all these kids. I'm not done. So I share that with you just to give you another apocryphal account, that this was not my event, but it was my mother's. I've just been fascinated by so many, and you had hundreds, and I've had a chance to read
But
your book.
the point, what you told just now is that your mother had a near-death experience. Actually, the start of a near-death experience. I heard more stories of people who were on the telephone and were struck by lightning and went out of their body. But that's how the near-death experience starts. It starts with an out-of-body experience. Most of the time, you hover against the ceiling or you're somewhere else immediately in this wonderful, unconditionally loving light. But your mother had this situation where she had the choice. Not everyone has a choice. It's interesting that your mother had the choice, because most people are told you need to go back because your life is not done yet. You have things to do. You promised before you came into your body, before you were born, that you wanted to do this life. It's not over yet. There's still a little path you have to walk. And then they remember and they go back again. And that's how it sometimes works. Sometimes people want to go back, like your mother, apparently. But there are other people that want to go back too. And that's how it starts. But the interesting thing of a near-death experience is that it starts with that you see your environment, where you are, where you had your cardiac arrest, or where you were hit by lightning, or where you were having an accident. And the interesting thing is that there are a lot of stories of people who had such an experience, out of body part first, and they saw things or they experienced things that they could tell later on. I saw this, and that had been confirmed later on. And those are called the verifiable out of body experiences. And they give some kind of circumstantial evidence that near-death experiences are real, that you can really get out of your body, that your consciousness can be somewhere else than where your body is. And that is very important. Those are the stories that can be verified later on that are very important. And there's a book with so many of these, hundreds of these stories. And I can give you an example if you'd like to hear one. Another one.
I'm all about the stories. I want to know everything.
Okay, let me give you this story. That's a verifiable out-of-body experience, and they call it veridical experiences, but that's a word that no one understands. So I call them verifiable out-of-body experience. You have this gentleman. He needed to have a few bypasses around his heart, so he was brought to hospital. He was on the operating table. The surgeon came in. they had a little chat, and then they gave him complete anesthesia. So he's out. Okay, he's gone. But the moment later, he finds himself hovering just below the ceiling, looking down onto what the doctor is doing. And he sees that they cover his body with a sheet, except for where the heart is. They have a little curtain over his neck. They tape shut his eyes, so he can't see. Yet he sees everything that's happening there. And the funny thing is that he could see through the table and saw that the surgeon was wearing boots. And then he saw the surgeon doing very strange gestures. So you have to picture it like this, that the surgeon had his hands, put them to his chest, and the elbows pointing out. You can picture how that is? And then he was pointing things to the nurses. And then that was a very strange way of doing. And he later, when he came back again, and he said to the nurses that after in the recovery room, he said, I saw the doctor doing this kind of strange dance with his elbows out.
We used to call it the funky chicken, Bob, remember?
Yes, like a flapping surgeon. Can you imagine a flapping surgeon? What is he doing in my operating room? He should be operating on me. He's doing all these gestures. Now, it came out that this surgeon always wanted to protect his hands from being contaminated at the start. So he pointed out with his elbows to the nurses what they should do. And the interesting thing was that the nurses first phoned Bruce Grayson, and Bruce Grayson is one of the outstanding researchers in this area. And he came over immediately. He had interviews with the nurses, with the patient, and with the doctor. And the truth came out that the doctor did this always, and no patient knew about this. So how could this guy have seen everything? So this is confirmed independently. And there are hundreds of these stories. So but it shows you that your consciousness can be outside your body. It doesn't need your body to exist.
I find it tremendously compelling because, again, I will go down the NDE rabbit hole also because I'm just fascinated by it. And the amount of medical professionals who have had these situations, including, I believe, a neurologist.
Yes, even Alexander.
Who's had these things and goes, listen, this is not a blood circulation electrical response thing. And I've studied these. I know these. I've done this. This is what I do for a living. This is not that, which I kind of find it funny that, there's always skeptics. And let's be clear, we need skeptics. I'm sure you went into it with a skeptical eye. And same thing, we all do.
That keeps us sharp.
Absolutely. But it's interesting how I think I was reading a report that came out just a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure you probably saw the same thing. We're like, well, how long does the body do? Is there electrical impulses? Do we go into this suspended state? Even at death, you don't die automatically. There may be 30 seconds to 2 minutes to where you're not quite dead, but you're in this weird coma-like state. But as one doctor said, it takes more faith to believe that you're in a coma trance-like state for 2 hours or for 2 minutes, for up to 2 minutes after your heart starts beating, than it is to go, hey, maybe there's something out there we don't know. But my point with the neurologist is that, and I'm so glad you know about it too, is that you've had medical professionals, you've had surgeons, you've had plenty of people who are there who've gone, I experienced this and I don't have an explanation for it.
Yeah. So even Alexander had his near-death experience during a episode there. He was out because of I don't know how you call that in English. You have this inflammation in the outer part of your brain.
The encephalitis in the brain.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. And then I'm Dutch. I don't know all the words instantaneously. I know
I'm weird. I just happen to have a lot of words in my head that shouldn't be there. So it's going to work out perfect. You and I are
so he was out and he had these these hallucinations. He knew they were hallucinations, but he also had his near-death experience, and he knew exactly what was a near-death experience and what were the hallucinations. Moreover, there was a thing in his near-death experience that he couldn't have known. He met, a long story short, in his near-death experience, he met a woman, and that was a very beautiful but very nice person, a loving person, and he didn't know who that was. And when he came back again in his body and he recuperated, and later he got to see a photo of his family. He was an adoptive son, so he didn't know his natural biological family.
Biological.
So then he saw a picture of the sister that had died. And that was exactly the same person. So he said, I met my sister during my NDE and I didn't know it was my sister. I saw that when I saw the picture later on. So that's also a kind of verifiable out-of-body experience. But that was during the NDE. But there are more of these stories, of course. But this is a very interesting one because he's a neurosurgeon and he was a materialist before. He didn't believe in all this NDE stuff. He was not anywhere spiritual, but now he is. He turned all the way around.
Yeah, because there's another, and I can't think of her name off the bat. I wish I had an encyclopedia on, but same thing. Again, someone who was in the medical profession, and I believe she was a brain surgeon as well, who went on a camping trip and had a
Mary Neal. I don't think she was a brain surgeon, but she was in the medical profession.
The medical professional doctor or something. I may have transcribed one to the next, but she had the same thing where she went through that, and she's like, I did not go into it thinking, but I came out of it going, something's just happened, and it affected me so much that I cannot not think about it. I cannot not look more into it.
That happens to many people. People who had an NDE, what they experience is so extraordinary and so real. They say this is more real than our life here. You're sitting on a chair. You think it's a real chair, but what you can experience on the other side is much more real than this. That's what they say. And then she had this experience that she went out of her body. That was during a kayak trip.
It was a kayak trip.
I think it was Chile or something, and she was drowning there. And then they got her out, but she saw herself from somewhere else. She was almost in this light environment. She was in that environment. She had a wonderful, blissful experience, and she heard her name. People were calling her name, trying to resuscitate her. And then she thought, okay, I'll look back just 1 second to see how they are. And with that 1 second, she was in her body. That goes very quick. Into the body goes very quick, often. But sometimes people say it takes more time to get into the body. There are wonderful stories there too, but it's all in my book. The book is with hundreds of quotes of near-death experiences, and the purpose of my book is to just give those quotes to the people so they can come to their own conclusion. It's not that I have to tell you what to think. You just read through the quotes and then come to your own conclusion what an NDE is. And that's what I try to do.
The cool thing that I find fascinating, and I think you do too, is even though they all have a common theme, they are all very different. And we've heard, we'll bring up the quintessential thing of the loving light, the bright, loving light.
Yes.
Now, to be honest, now, that is something that means nothing to a human experience, right? I mean, and I say it this way. If I said, hey, if you walk into the room, there's going to be a loving light, you're not going to go, oh, that light feels so loving. That feels so good. So it's beyond, it's not words that should go together.
Yeah.
as you translate from English to Dutch.
That's true. I mean, the word love is used maybe so often that it doesn't have any meaning. But what is consistently said, by the way, it's totally true what you say. Every NDE is different. There are commonalities, but the pictures they get is totally different. There's not one NDE equal to another one. They are all unique. The point is that most NDEs say that they encountered unconditional love, and the word love is something we have some kind of conceptuality around, but there are people that say it's really, most of them say it's unconditional. And now you need to understand what unconditional is. Unconditional is really, there are no conditions. It doesn't matter what you are or what you've done. So you can be a man, a woman, rich, poor. You can be a crook. You can be a saint-like person. It doesn't matter. You can be from any religion. There are people that have no religions, atheists that have NDEs, blissful NDEs, and there are people from all the other religions, Christianity, Muslim, that have had these experiences. But you also have to understand. Think of someone you don't like. Everyone has someone they don't really like. Okay, it could be a politician. It could be someone.
Well, just right off the head, we can think of the terrorist, right? Any
You can always
terrorist.
think of someone.
Yeah, so you can think of
those
people who would be willing to do horrible things, not to get
Yeah.
political. I'm just saying to give us someone that we could all go, this is reprehensible.
Yeah. So, and if I understand Andy is correct, it's also for those people. It's for everyone. There's no exception. It's unconditional. And that's maybe difficult to understand for people who are brought up in, like I was in Roman Catholicism. There are people that are bad that go to hell, and others that go to purgatory and things like that. Only a few that are really good go immediately to heaven. But it's for everyone. Everyone is loved.
Well, now your other side of that is that because watching your research, when you say, but we are one. So there is a judgment, but the judgment comes from you now feel what you did.
Exactly. Yes. Well, and that comes out of life reviews. It comes out of life reviews. Let me explain something about that, because life reviews, as I said before, are really what they are. They are a review of your life. You can see what you've done to others, and you don't see that as an onlooker, but you see that also as the other person that you did something to. Let me give you a nice example here. There was this woman from the Netherlands, an old woman by now because she was in the war. And the war is more than 75 years ago. And she was small then. And after the war, the Netherlands was nothing. It was a war-torn country, nothing. So, and the mother had some sweets and gave it to the girl. To bring back to the school and to share that with friends. And she did so. Now, later on, when she had her near-death experience, she saw that episode where she shared the sweets with the school friends, and she saw what the school friends thought. And she felt what they felt, as if she was a school friend. And she felt that she was worth, and she felt the love and all these things. And she was that school friend for a moment. But it didn't stop there. It went also over to the mother of the school friend. So there is a kind of ripple effect that's also being told by NDEs. Whatever you do, it has an effect not only on the place that you do this, but it goes further. You can't really see it, but there is kind of a ripple effect. And the same girl had a friend who had lice, and that she saw also in their live review. And the lice, these are the horrible crawling animals in your hair. There were no shampoos at the time, so the girlfriend asked her to help her kill a few, and then she made a big fuss out of it. Okay, come here, I'll squeeze a few, and then in her life review, she saw that episode and she saw what that did to her, the girlfriend, and she felt it as if she was that friend. She felt a stabbing in her heart of the pain of being exposed with lice. And the interesting thing was that was not the most horrible thing that she felt, but she felt that she had missed out on an opportunity to do something good. So there is this moment that she had the opportunity to choose between making a big fuss out of it or doing it in secret. The big fuss brought pain. If she had done it in a different way, she saw that she would have brought more love into the world. And the fact that she chose for the other one, that hurt really. And there was no judgment. Nevertheless, there was no judgment. That was the whole thing. It's just for you to understand your position or your situation in the world. That's the only thing of a life review.
We're going to go down more of this road and also talk about the people who did not have positive NDEs. And that's going to be interesting too. Quick word from our sponsors. Don't forget to support our sponsors because they allow us to be able to do this and have wonderful, interesting conversations like this. Coming right back with Bob Coppes.
If you're looking for Western wear, you need to find Winchester Western Wear at 1185 South Bascom Avenue in San Jose. You're not going to find the perfect outfit at the mall to the outlets. Come to the place with over 40 years of experience and all the top name brands like Ariat, Justin, Stetson, Tony Lama, and more. When you go to the great country shows at Shoreline, SAP, Club Rodeo, or Clola Shans, you'll be looking your best. From boots to hats to everything in between with a knowledgeable staff that'll make the entire experience a fun one. Find them online at winchesterww.com. That's winchesterww.com. Or put this in your maps, 1185 South Bascom Avenue in San Jose. Winchester Western Wear. They'll help you find a look you love.
I'm with Mike and Brenda Council with another real Mike Council plumbing and rooter story. Let's talk about the early days. What was it like?
Well, when we first started, the phone was by the bed.
So just the two of you?
Exactly.
And I would answer the emergency calls in the middle of the night. I'd wake up and answer them.
2:00, I'm headed out the door.
So 30 years ago.
30 years and 6 months.
But I hear Mike Council Plumbing might have had its beginnings when you were, what, a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in a little one-room shack, and we had an outhouse out back.
An outhouse?
That's correct.
Oh, my.
And ended up with a great appreciation for indoor plumbing.
Yeah, I guess. And when you finally got it?
It was a great day.
Since 1993, the people of San Jose and the South Bay have trusted Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter for all their plumbing needs. From emergencies like a drain backup or water leak, maybe you need a new water heater or fixture installed, a gas appliance hooked up. Give Mike Council a call at 408-217-1002 or go to mcplumbing.com, an official partner of the San Jose Sharks.
You're in clean hands with Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter.
I want to tell you why I am all in on Bison Junk. First and foremost, they are a full-service, eco-friendly junk removal company, but with this difference. They focus on recycling and donating usable goods. Their customer service sets them apart, and they pride themselves on their integrity. They'll show up when they say they will, and they'll do what they promise. If you have hard-to-remove items like hot tubs or large furniture, they figure it out so you don't have to. They want to be who you always come back to when it's time to declutter and organize your home or business. They're worth every penny at bisonjunk.com.
So, Bob, as we continue to go down the line of NDEs, and you were talking about one of the things that in the example of the lady from the Netherlands, and talking about how she felt bad because she understood what she did for that young girl, as far as making her feel bad, that she felt it as if it happened to herself. And then she also felt the regret. And I think there's the other side, because I will freely tell you, I'm a man of faith. That's something I stand upon and go with that. And I also look as one of the things that I think heaven is that the joys we're going to have is the people that we meet, we helped. The people we meet that we did things for. They can come up and go, listen, this is what happened here. This is what you did. You didn't even know. And that's some of the joys that are going to happen. But as we go down the NDE thing, they're rare, but there are some where people don't feel the love. They don't feel that it's a negative experience, but not to the point where in everyone that I've researched or everyone I've talked about, it changed them for the better.
Yes.
It changed them to go, hey, whoa, this needs to change. This changes my approach.
Yes.
Can you talk on that?
Yeah. You're talking about distressing NDEs, and they are there. We can't just close our eyes for this phenomenon. So it exists, and they are rare, but there are enough to say that it's not an anomaly. Okay. So, and another thing that we discovered is that you cannot say that people who are bad have a distressing NDE, and that people who have been good only get blissful NDE. So that's something we really discovered. And I can give you an example of Daniel Brinkley. Daniel Brinkley had a near-death experience as a consequence of the same thing that your mother went through, phoning on a landline and having a lightning strike, and then he was blown away. The electricity went through his body to the floor, and you can still see, I think, where he was standing and stuff like that. But he had his near-death experience, and you have to understand that Daniel Brinkley, he wrote it in a book. People can look it up. He said of himself that he was not a very nice person. He was a bully in school. He teased people. He was in numerous fights. And then he was in an American institution or organization that went abroad to other countries to kill off enemies of the United States. I just tell you what he wrote. I don't have a judgment there. And he said, one time I had to kill one person, and I blew up a whole hotel with 50 people in it. So I blew away a lot of lives just to get out to one. And he had a wonderful NDE, a blissful NDE, where in which he saw his life review. And now he said, when I was at my life review and I saw what I did, and I saw what I did to all these people, also this one person that I had to take out, I saw their lives. I saw their lives from their point of view, but I also saw the lives of their women and children from their point of view. And that was painful for him. But he had a blissful ending otherwise, and it changed him completely. And that's something that happens so often, that people always change because of an NDE. And there are other stories of there's a very brave woman, Kathy McDaniel. She wrote a book about her distressing NDE, and she is just a regular woman like so many around. Nothing special she did. In any case, she didn't blow up a hotel with 50 guests in it. And she had a distressing NDE, and the themes in her NDE evolved around prostitution, around AIDS. She had AIDS, and she met all these horrible creatures with AIDS, and she realized later on that she had, during her life, judgments on prostitution and on people with AIDS. So the point is that we don't really know too much about NDEs, but this is the thing that we do know. So again, blissful NDEs can happen to anyone, and distressful NDEs can happen to anyone too. But eventually, there should be another explanation for distressful NDEs. And Nancy Evans Bush, that's someone who is an expert on these. She has a theory that I believe is true, is that in the first part of your NDE, when you're not really dead and you're not really at home in this other wonderful area, that a collective consciousness, elements of those can just pop up. And also things from your own history can pop up, like what I explained from Kathy McDaniel. So, but eventually, I believe that everyone will go to this wonderful place. Most people call it heaven. And there are also NDEs that really say, there's one, Chris Carson, he said, it's also in his book, he said, I got to understand very clearly that there is no purgatory and no hell. We all go home. And there are other NDEs that say the same thing. So I would like to have your listeners take away from all this discussion that yes, there are distressing NDEs, but I believe that everyone eventually goes home, whatever you did. But it's nicer if you have done loving things. You will look back on your life much more happy if you have done loving things to others.
Well, we can go down a whole religious aspect, but I don't want to get into that to you. I do want to do this. I read something here in the last week, so it's interesting because before you and I had even agreed to talking about the experiences some people have had during long comas. I don't know if that's anything that has brushed up against you. I read this one man, he was in a coma for over a year. And in the year, he lived a life. He lived a life where he had met a woman in Brazil and married, and it was all of these different things. And he, again, there was a joy there. And it was, I don't know if I just found that fascinating.
It's
Because as we sit back and try to figure out what heaven is, in the Bible, it says there'll be a new earth. It's not going to be people in a cloud. We're going to have this, and we're going to have bodies, and they're going to be awesome. And it's interesting in that scenario when I read about it, where he was living a life where there was no pain. There was no downside. During his coma, and he was in it for over a year.
Wow. I've never heard
that?
that.
Huh?
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's what I'm saying.
He had two lives, one in Brazil and one laying in a bed somewhere in the United States. Wow, that's really.
But it's very interesting that would happen, and you wonder where that would be going with, that he may have touched up against that next plane.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how that works.
There's your next
There's
book,
another
Bob.
thing, the only thing that I do with my quotes in my book is just to give them to people. Also the ones that I just gave you from on the distressing NDEs. I don't have a judgment there. I just give them to people to get to them, and then they can get to their own conclusion. I think that people are intelligent enough to get their own conclusion, or they will be led to the conclusion. I don't know how that works. And the other thing is that the real thing out there, we don't know how that is. We will never really know. We cannot get that from any of the religious scripts or so. It's a totally different other world. You cannot. That's one of the things that NDEs say. I cannot explain what it is because there are no words and no concepts in our language to explain what happens there or what I experienced over there. So it's ineffable. It's ineffable.
We go back to the words that don't go together. Loving light should not go together. But they can't come up with any other words to explain it, right? So I find it fascinating. That's one of the things that I so enjoy about it is they try to explain something that's unexplainable. And for me, and I can't talk with everybody else, but for me, the reason I'm fascinated is because I'm like anybody else. I want to know, but there's something in me that says this rings true, and I can't explain it.
Yeah, well, that happened to me too. When I read this book of Raymond Moody with that particular life review, I thought this is true. This is more true than what I have been taught in Roman Catholic Church. So yeah, it needs to resonate with you. And that did with you apparently. So it did with me too.
I'll give you the addendum to my mother's story, right?
Well, Good.
Right. So when she, do you want to stay or do you want to go back? Do you want to come home, stay home, or you want to go back? And years later, after she had lived a full life, she was walking to the kitchen. They heard her fall. I wasn't there. This is my family. They heard her fall. They go down. She's non-responsive. My brother's brother-in-law happened to be at the house that night, and he was an EMT. So he started performing chest compressions, resuscitation,
Yes.
as the ambulance was getting there. All of a sudden, she comes to. They set her up, and she looks around and she goes, "Y'all don't worry about me. I'm fine." And died. That was it. She literally looked up and said, "Y'all don't worry about me. I'm fine." And died.
Oh, really? But
Really?
did she have time enough to tell you that? She was hovering against ceiling.
No, this is a different thing, right? So the
Of
phone.
course. Yeah.
This is the
Yeah.
addendum. So the phone thing happened.
Yes.
This is the phone thing happened 30 years earlier.
I understand.
This is 30 years later when she has lived a full life, right? And I told you, she looked around and said, "I got all these kids." And she had literally, my stepfather had told me she'd literally had the conversation that they went to church and the sermon was, "Are you ready?" And she looked at him and said, "I've seen my children grow up. I've got to meet my grandchildren and know what kind of people they are. If the Lord took me home tomorrow, I'd be ready." And literally the next day, this is not apocryphal. This is literally the next day. She goes through that, has a heart attack. My brother's brother-in-law revives her. She looks up. They sit her up. She tries to get up. They sit her up. She looks around and goes, "Y'all don't worry about me. I'm fine."
That's
And
wonderful.
passes.
That's such a nice story. That's really, and I think that it happens often that people leave the earth with a moment of lucidity and then they die. That has been told about people that have dementia. They at one moment, your mother didn't have that, of course, but they have one moment of lucidity, and they say the things that make sense, and they say some things like this: "I'm going home" or so, and they go. And that's also what your mother, she knew that she would go, and she said it out loud.
She'd been there.
Yeah.
She had been there, which I find, and I love the story about Sam Kinison. If you know him, he was a very famous comedian back in the 90s, and he started off as a preacher and then became disillusioned with faith and became very funny, and he was screaming, and he went all about being an atheist and agnostic and the whole thing. Well, anyway, he was in a horrific car accident driving to Las Vegas, and his brother was in the truck behind him. And he got hit by a drunk driver, and they get out, and Sam they pull him out, and he's obviously gravely injured. And he he goes, no, I don't want to die. I'm not ready to go. He listens for about 5 seconds and then goes, "Oh, okay." His last words.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. "Oh,
Wow.
okay." Isn't that fascinating?
But then it gives me the thought that he might have had contact with the light, and that the light said, "Well, you have to stay here," and then that's what he does. I mean, if the light says something, it's like, you need to do.
Well, you can stay here, but you're going to be gravely injured, or you can come home and live in peace.
Yeah.
And it just, you can almost, because I think it's common nature it sounds like he was in a conversation.
Yes.
And then he listens to the response. And then his response was, and his brother goes, "I was right there. There was nobody talking." And he goes, "Oh, okay."
But the other way around is also has happened. Like there are people like Anita Morjani. Maybe you have heard of her. She wrote a wonderful book about her NDE, but she was dying of cancer, and she was in the hospital, and she was at one point she was dead. And then she had her near-death experience, and they told her, you can either stay here. So she got the choice. You can stay here, or you can go back. And if you choose to go back, we will make your body whole again. We will heal you, and you will be able to walk and do whatever you want to do. And she chose for that. And the funny thing is that she recovered, and she recovered within a week, I think. And she was full of cancer. And it's documented. This is really documented. She is there, and she's alive, and she has all these talks, and she had this wonderful book. And there are more of these cases where people get the choice, and they say, well, my body is totally damaged. I can't go in there. And then they say, well, we will fix it. And they go in, and it is a miracle what happened. They recover so quickly. It's unbelievable, but it's happened.
Yeah, I find it, I can share stories with you. My youngest son was literally born dead. I mean, I walked into the delivery room, and they're doing compressions.
Horrible.
Well, he was, but he's fine. But they put him on a situation where they basically kind of put him in an induced coma for 3 days. They lowered his body temperature to 86 degrees.
Wow.
And I remember
as a baby.
Newborn.
Jeez.
Newborn. He had enough hypoxic event. He's 11 years old now, and he's just full of vinegar. But at the time, I remember getting in my car because I had another son. And so it was important for me to go home and see. I'm getting in my car to drive to the Stanford University. I'm sure you've heard of it. Very famous medical trauma unit they have up there. And I get in the car, and I feel my mother's presence with me because she had passed by this time. And I feel my mother's presence. And I remember saying to her, he's probably closer to you than he is to me right now. Can you take care of him and send him home? Send him back. Now, he did. No brain damage. They feared he was going to have horrible brain damage. None. Sharpest, smartest kid in the world you ever met. I mean, literally a straight A student. But the one thing he has always had is an unshakable faith. He reads his Bible every day. He's not told to. He's just got this unshakable faith. To hear him pray is to be stirred, because he's just been there. And I was talking with my wife one time, and she goes, where do you think he gets that from? And my response is, because he's been there.
I think so, too.
Because he's been there, and he knows. And for you to tell him to say, there is no whatever, is the same thing as if I said, hey, this is not a pin. This is an elephant.
Exactly. Yeah.
He would look at you like, are you crazy? Are you literally crazy right now? And I always had another story. That's another story I wanted to share with you, that it's just that. And that's where those things ring true for me, right? That's what those things, when having a chance to talk with you like this is like, wow, there's something in me that goes, that's right. That right there. That's right.
Another story that I'd like to tell you is what I heard from a woman who was having her NDE. And well, if you are on the other side, you get to see everything. You understand everything, apparently. Yeah, that's what they say. I just repeat what they say. So they understand everything. All knowledge is there for them. Just tap into it and you know it. You can see into the future. You can see into the past. You know everything. And she knew she had to go back, and she wanted to go back because she had a child to care for. And then she decided, I will think of one sentence that will say it all, that I see here, that has all the knowledge contained in this one sentence. And that one sentence is, all is everything and everything is one. So all is everything and everything is one. And that's the point, is that we are one. That's what she says, and that's what so many other people say. And other great story that you might like to hear is a one little girl, she had her NDE as a result of a not so very nice happening. She was assaulted by two men. They tried to drown her. She saw the sun from under the water up. If you're under the water, you look up, you can see through the water, you can see the sun. But at the same time, she was hovering above the whole scene, and she saw these two guys doing this stuff with her. And she saw their father coming to rescue her. And she was 8. She was 8 years old, a very young girl. And she was rescued. The guys ran away, but she had this during her NDE. She had a conversation with someone, and she says, "Well, it's a little girl." She said, "Must have been God. It's the only one there, so it was God." And then God gave her a recipe for life because she had to start her life again. And then the recipe contained only 4 ingredients, and those are love, be loved, just be, and experience life. So, and I thought that was a nice story because, the last 2 ingredients are easy. Just be and experience life. You can do by sitting on a chair. You don't have to do anything, and you do those things already. But love and be loved, those are 2 things that you need that require some action. You can't just sit on a chair and love. You need to do something for it, and also be loved. Most people like to give, sort of like to give love away to others, but they find it more difficult to accept it from others. But it's a balance. You need to do that also. So, and I thought that was a nice story. It's kind of easy for everyone to do.
Has all this research eased or assuaged your fear of death? Or did you ever have a fear of death? Or is that something now that, like I said, is it something that, because you've spent a lot of time into it, what's your thoughts? How do you feel as you approach it? Because it's, death and taxes, they're all there.
Those are the only 2 things that are real. Taxes I pay. Death will come. Yeah. But, being dead is not something that I'm afraid of, because of all these stories. I think it's going to be nice. And I believe those. But dying can be not so very nice. It depends on how you die. So, being assaulted or so is so you understand what I say? It's being dead is okay for me, but the way of dying that could be a little bit of I could be afraid of the way it could happen. Okay, so that's the only thing. But
not afraid of the end itself.
Sorry?
Not afraid of the end itself.
No.
The process is something we could all fear.
That's it, the process. But I also understand from people that once you are in the process, sometimes people already leave their body on beforehand. So, and the other thing is that if you die because of pain or so, what people say when they have their NDE, when they leave their body, the moment they leave their body, they don't feel pain anymore. It's not there. It vanishes, and you get detached. So, So I think dying, even if it's in perhaps a violent way, it can be quick, and you will eventually feel well. The feeling well part will be there anyway. That's what I believe.
Bob Coppes, I knew I was going to enjoy this conversation, and I certainly did. This has been just fascinating. The book is called Impressions of Near-Death Experiences.
I love listening to your story about your mother. It's very, very interesting. Thank you for giving that.
You are welcome. I love sharing it. And, she was an amazing woman, and that's how we stay alive for this time. 100 years, everybody alive now will be forgotten about us for 100 years. But we can live on as long as the people who do know us have stories to share.
That's it.
So I I thank you. This has been awesome. And again, the book is Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, and you have a website, and we'll put a link to that in that.
Yeah, there's a link in the book to my website. There's also a QR code for a number of small videos about the contents of the book. And the website, by the way, is bobcoppes.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary.